Hey guys, it's Luke. Just wanted to jump up here real quick. Like you, a lot of stuff going on, and here in Michigan, we're pretty much on lockdown. The governor was speaking today at 11. We were pretty sure that she was just going to shut the schools down for the rest of the year, but we're just trying to figure some stuff out. So I have our spare bedroom slash workout room slash my office in play now. So I took all my stuff home from my office and make it work. So we'll figure it out. Hopefully it's just another couple weeks, but like you, we're just trying to roll with the punches and go from there. So I just want to jump on here and talk a little bit to you guys. I put that poll. I put a poll in the running community, the coaching group, in our Boston group, and it was for the coach athletes. Some of those people are coached by me, some are coached by one of our other coaches, and then in the Boston group, I pretty much knew where everybody was at, but just wanted to finalize and make sure. And then in the running community, I just really kind of wanted to see what people were doing, because I was seeing a lot of posts in there, and some people were pushing on, some people are just taking a break. And I think whether you're taking a break now or going to finish through a race segment, we're all going to be in the same boat pretty soon, and that's just going to be in a position of rebuilding. And hopefully we can all start that on a healthy and safe level there. But what I was noticing more in the running community than anything, and I think it's just because there's nearly 12,000 people in there, and you see a lot more of what people are thinking. But I saw a lot of lack of motivation posts right now, and I'll be honest with you too. I'm not overly motivated either. I would say running is probably fourth or fifth on my list right now. I think in my case, and I think with a lot of you, is that running itself is just part of your routine, right? And so you get a run in, whether or not it's quality training is another story right now, but you're still getting the runs in, but they're not overly motivated, and there's kind of a big deflation out there, which I want to talk about today. Is that a bad thing? And I think a lot of you, it's not going to be a bad thing. I think a little bit of downtime from making running a major priority isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I saw this post this morning on the Facebook group. Somebody posted and it's like, I think this is a blessing in disguise, because all I did is race, and this is forced downtime, and I can actually focus on actually training. And I think a fair number of you are in that same position. And ultimately, you've raced yourself into being fit, but you've also limited how well you can perform simply because you've just been racing. And the same thing if you did a fall marathon and then jumped right in and started to train for Boston or a spring marathon, and maybe that's been your cycle for the last few years. This might be actually a good time to just take a break, take a step back, and just hit the reset button. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And when I was thinking about this, what I was going to say, I was thinking about the book, The One Thing. And if you've read that book, the author escapes me, but it's more about business, but it can really be anything in life, right? Like if you have a passion, that's going to be your one thing for a long time. But ultimately, you swing back to other things that do mean as much to you right now. So like a segment where you're really trying to qualify for Boston, that one thing might be the segment trying to qualify for Boston. But as soon as that's over, you shift back over to the other side where you have other things that are essentially a priority. So the main point was basically like, achieving balance is incredibly difficult. And when you look at really successful people, that's not always the case. They do have balance in their life, but it doesn't look like the balance that you see where it's 50-50 on, work versus other things in life. Sometimes it's, 75% work and 25% other things. But once that one thing is done, you can shift that focus again. And I think a lot of us needed to be in that point where we needed to just kind of take a step back and reshift where our focus should be. So, and like I said, I mean, honestly, running is probably fourth or fifth on my list. It's the motivation is not there to really. The motivation is there to run, just because we're in the house all the time and we still have running. We can still go outside and run, and so that motivation is there. But the motivation to do really hard work, because what's the fruit of that right now? I totally understand that lack of motivation, and that's where I think that it's not a bad thing where we just take a step back from those things. So that's where I really feel. I wouldn't be too upset. I feel like a lot of people really get down on themselves for that, but I think right now it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just not necessarily healthy if you let it linger on and on and on. So, and of course my dog is barking now. So, all right. So some things to think about when I think of lack of motivation. All right, so some things I want you to think about over these next few weeks is what I mentioned. Not necessarily lack of motivation to train, but train with a specific purpose. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Going for an easy run around the neighborhood, especially in the spring, can be a great mood boost. I mean, we've actually had some pretty decent weather here. It's nice to be out there. It's nice to just feel the fresh air, and I think for some of us too, we kind of take those things for granted until all of a sudden it's not readily available. So the other thing I want to touch on really quick, and we can explore these things in detail later on, but just something to really kind of start thinking about is I want you to set yourself up for success when we come on the other side of this, right? So we right now you don't have to have the highest activity levels. If you're running 60 miles a week and you're only running, 30 to 35, maybe 40 miles a week right now, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? So you're going to be recovering from a lot of the hard training that you've done, but you've also maintained the vast majority of that fitness. Maintaining is so much easier than gaining, and we have to remember that. But overall, our activity levels are going to be lower, so don't eat like you're still training for a marathon. And I actually fell victim to this. I have not adhered to that very well. And, honestly, that's part of my lack of motivation for workouts, because I'm let's just say I'm not that close to race weight right now. And I think it's hard to maintain that. I don't think it's necessarily healthy to maintain that type of race weight if you really go by what that is. But I'm definitely not close to where I should be. But now I've noticed that, and I think that's a little bit of my issue with things, and not necessarily depression or anything like that, but definitely like just kind of in a rougher mood. Just I'm not eating as healthy. I'm stressed out because. Obviously, it's a big hit. It's a big hit on business. And the longer this goes, it's going to be a bigger hit. And I don't know what options are going to come out of what was passed the other day. Full disclosure, I'm a pretty conservative Christian guy. And, if Boeing gets $17 billion to fund their CEO buybacks and stuff, I'm going to be pissed, right? Like that's not what it's for. And if it's allowed to go that route, you're going to have a lot of mad Americans. And, when you look at small businesses, I am a small business, and I'm the vast majority of what business owners are in the United States. And, if I have to take a loan out, and thankfully I can get, if that SBA thing works out and it's 3% or whatever it's supposed to be, that's a great deal. But I still got to pay that money back, and I'm not buying any stock back, So, but anyway, so there's that stress. There's, my dog's 12 years old. He gets up probably 4 times a night right now. So it's like, there's not enough CBD in the world to calm him down. He's just up and down, up and down. So it's like all these things outside of everything else that's going on has added a lot of stress. And it's just one of those things. So it's like, your own health and well-being has got to be more important. So running itself shouldn't necessarily be another source of that stress. It should be something to help relieve that stress. So it doesn't have to be anything crazy. I also put down here, pick one thing you want to work on. And these are just examples. It can be a number of things, but foam rolling, basic strength, nutrition, But be very specific with it. So I can say foam rolling. Well, okay, foam rolling what? What are we talking about? Basic strength. What are we talking about? Nutrition. What are we talking about? So we're taking very broad topics. You need to make very specific with it. So it might be, I'm going to foam roll 4 times a week when I get up in the morning, or I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing core after runs, or I'm going to do them on my non-running days. I'm going to eat 20 grams of protein 4 times a day. Small things like that. Or I'm going to focus on drinking, 100 ounces of water a day, right? And I'm going to space that out. I'm going to have a jug. I'm going to fill that up, 2 or 3 times a day. Whatever the case is, be very specific with a small goal. And oftentimes what that'll be like, it's like that whole idea of, if you want to be organized, you start by making your bed every morning. Same type of thing, right? So you start with something small and specific, and ultimately it ends up branching off to being able to do other things. And all of a sudden you're adding things into your life that are naturally going to make you more successful, make you more healthy, make you more better performer running, better at work, whatever the case is. You're doing all these, you just kind of gravitate towards doing these things one by one. And so that's a lot easier way to go about it than making these drastic changes all at once. So I think if there's big drastic changes you want to get to, that's great, but let's take that all the way back to what's the smallest thing we can start on, and being very consistent with that right away. And ultimately that will naturally lead to being able to do other things. And I think a lot of times it just ends up being subconsciously, because I think here's an example, like when I was really focusing on drinking 3 to 3.5 liters of water a day, that ultimately led, without really a conscious thinking of it, was me eating more fruits, me eating more vegetables, not eating as much, because I was mistakenly before as hunger was actually thirst. And so I was eating less overall calories, and I was actually much leaner, much more at race weight. And so those types of things lead into each other. And I think that's a much more practical approach right now, especially right now. Like, you don't want to make anything a drastic change when things are as stressful as they already are. And maybe that might be one thing, like I'm find one way where I can relieve my stress other than necessarily running, and that might be something you want to take a look at. So there's a lot of different things you can look at, but just take it from a very broad perspective and work it back to maybe make a list of what specific things would help you get to that ultimate goal, and just pick one of those things for now. And then, maybe have like a top 5 list. Once one is kind of mastered, move on to the next, or something like that. There's a number of ways you can do it. So a lot of you are under stress right now, and it's really hard. So really hard training may not be the best for you right now. And I'm talking really from a general health standpoint as well as a stress standpoint. And given the current situation, it just might not make that much sense to put yourself in a position where you might get sick. So those are all things to think about. And so ultimately, you might get shut down right now from running, but then to me, it's always an opportunity to make advancements in other things. Like for me, it's kind of forced my hand into some things that I've been wanting to get done for a long time, from a business standpoint, from a house standpoint, things like that. And it's really just all of a sudden forced that hand. And so ideally, when this all clears up, I can go back and I'll actually be further ahead in my business, or with stuff I want to do around the house, and actually probably sooner than what I was going to do it, because it probably wouldn't have gotten done until this summer if this wouldn't have happened. So you always have to look at where the opportunity lies and make the most of that opportunity. And so what might seem like a setback right now really might actually be helping you get more forward farther in actually a faster time frame. So it doesn't, doom and gloom doesn't really breed much more than doom and gloom, right? So if you can find a way to be positive about things, which I think a lot of you are, I wouldn't say that the majority of you are all doom and gloom. I think there's some general being upset with things being canceled, but I think we're all on the same page, just understanding what the situation is, and it's completely out of a lot of people's hands. Well, it is completely out of everybody's hands, but and so I think I think now that's settling down, I think people are kind of over that initial disappointment and really kind of figuring out where they can go from here and what to do. So that's about it for today. I think there's anything else I had written down here. So if I can get you to believe, here's a big thing too. If I can get you to believe, and this goes back to what we were talking about, if I can get you to believe that if you were chronically overtrained and weighed down and this was with all aspects of life, this can actually help you come back even better. And I think it's a hard thing to believe, but even from just a physiological standpoint, it happens. It's it's when you're cycling training in and with planned rest, it can lead to great dividends later on. It actually allows you to get to another level even faster, because instead of just continually pushing the envelope and always being on the verge of being overtrained, you can actually now recover from all that work you've done, and then that ultimately may catapult you even further when you come back. And that's usually with planned rest. And I know this wasn't necessarily planned rest for people, but you're not hurt. It's not an unplanned rest due to illness or sickness. It's an unplanned rest due to something completely unrelated to running. And that might as well be a planned rest. So think about those things. I appreciate you guys listening, and we'll figure out where to go next. All right, I'll talk to you later. All right, bye-bye.